Last year, leading up to the draft, all of the talk was about which generational receiver the Chargers would take at 5, and then they laughed their way up to the podium to select Joe Alt. Will they consider a pass catcher this year at 22, or will they continue to build through the trenches?
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 9 seasons, but this is our 7th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers for making us your first listen today. To make sure that you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel, or listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Daniel, one thing we know about Jim Harbaugh is that he is an old school football coach, and he believes in building out those trenches and then getting your skill position players to complement after you already have the spawn of your football team taken care of. So we're going to talk about seeing if that philosophy carries over into year 2. And also, will the Chargers trade it for Tyler Warren if he gets to a spot that seems like it is a possibility? That's something we're going to talk about. And is this Zion Johnson business just smoke? We're going to find out.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I'm not exactly sure how it would serve them to do it. Seems like they're pretty infatuated with the idea, but it is Buy or Sell Wednesday today, so we're going to be getting into the biggest Charger storylines and overreactions, and I think the closer we get to the draft, the bigger and crazier the overreactions are going to get, and then maybe even more so after the picks are selected. But, David, we have a good one here that made me think of one that I think is going to be a big talking point going into the draft this year. This is from Bellicose, who says, buy or sell, we go pass catcher in the first round, all of us knowing the Harbaugh way. And basically the way I take that is this. Buy or sell, the Chargers would actually take a pass catching option in the first round like we thought they might last year, or would they just end up, instead of just going with what they kind of told us they were going to do and did, which is going the trenches?
Yeah, I think it's going to have to take the right type of pass catcher to be there and be available at 22. I think that's really what it is. I think we know that the depth of this draft is really in the defensive line. So honestly, I think that's probably where they're going to want to go, just because the quality and quantity of players that are of good quality are a lot higher at the defensive line position, and the likelihood of having a pass catcher that you're enamored with that will be available at 22 just seems like it's a lot less likely, just considering the amount of people that are available at that spot.
Yeah, I would buy that they would take a pass catcher. I think that if you look at the history, not just of, what Jim Harbaugh has done, but specifically what Joe Hortiz has done, I wouldn't get too carried away with just the fact that they took Joe Alt last year at pick 5, because when we looked back on it, it was very clear that they played it perfectly. They knew they wanted a tackle. They knew they needed a receiver. And instead of going, receiver in round 1 and taking in Malik Neighbors and then getting whoever would have been available, which was not much at tackle in the second round, they got 2 guys that are top flight starters already and were able to do that in a way they wouldn't have had they gone Malik Neighbors at 5 last season. So I'd say the other part of it, and the other reason I'd buy that they're taking a pass catcher, is when Joe Hortiz was in Baltimore, in the last 6 drafts that he was there, they took 2 players in the trenches in the first round, and both of those were the second of their 2 first-round picks. There wasn't a single in those 6 drafts where they took a offensive lineman or defensive lineman or even edge rusher with their first pick in the draft. None of them. And they took, in those 6 seasons, 3 wide receivers. In 6 years, they drafted 3 wide receivers in the first round. So to think that, especially for this regime under Joe Hortiz, that they wouldn't take a pass catcher there, I think is kind of a small sample size bias, because we've only seen them make 1 first-round pick. Now, last year, everyone thought they were going to go weapon, and they told us, hey, we want offensive linemen. We think offensive linemen are weapons. They told us all these things. They want to be an offensive line team, and we didn't listen close enough. They could very well go with the trenches pick, and it's not just the defensive line, David, and I think the argument would be, hey, you can wait for defensive line because there's so many talented ones, where the wide receiver group, maybe you don't have as many talented guys or guys that you can think can be day 1 starters, or even the tight end group. What I would say, though, is Joe Hortiz also helped find Mark Andrews in the 3rd round. He also helped find Isaiah Likely in the 4th round. Maybe they think they can find those guys later on in the draft. But I would say, when talking about a guy coming from a regime that took 3 first-round wide receivers, and even in his first season with the Chargers, took a wide receiver soon in round 2 and traded up to get him.
Yeah.
It's probably an overreaction to think that there's no way they take a pass catcher, but I agree with you. Hey, let's not overlook that this is a Jim Harbaugh team. Even though Joe Hortiz was a John Harbaugh team who has a lot of the same philosophies, they could easily just end up going with the trenches, not just on the defensive line, but also on the offensive line with someone like a Gray Zabel, right, or a Tyler Booker, like we talked about with Damian Parson. But this next one here is from Sayal55, who says, buy or sell, the Chargers will continue to do what we've wanted them to do for years, and they didn't, and build this team through the trenches, going offensive line or defensive line in both round 1 and round 2. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to sell it. I think the Chargers showed last year, obviously, you were just talking about it, how, they were able to take Joe Alton with the 5th overall pick and Ladd McConkey with their, first pick in the 2nd round, trading up to go get him. That, if that player is available, that they're going to go try to make that and try to get that done. With the 1st and 2nd round pick, I just don't think that you can allocate all of your resources knowing that you have a high priority on your offensive line and a high priority that you need to address with a pass catcher. And I think that's something that, they've shown that they've done before, and I think that they will do again. And I think that they truly want to make sure that they can get these pass catchers locked down with these cost-controlled contracts, those rookie deals. That way, you can control that, because those guys get paid a ton of money when they go to get contracts. And obviously we know Joe Hortiz loves his comp pick. So if he can try to get a player that, can produce that, or bring him in and keep him, then I think that's what they would prefer to do.
I would sell that it's going to happen, but I would buy that there's a chance that it happens for sure, just because both of those are needs that you have. Like, it would be one thing if you were set at one of those spots, but you're not. And I mean, now when you have, tackles making $30 million and Milton Williams, a one-year kind of wonder at this point, making $26 million, everyone's expensive once they get good. But I do think when you have a huge hole at left guard already, and you could easily make the argument that that should be one of your top 2 picks, and you look at this defensive line class and see all the talent that's in the first couple of rounds, because there might be a run on it where you see, 10 of them taken in a span of 25 picks. You have to look at it and be like, okay, that's possible.
Yeah.
Is it the best way to build it? I don't think so. I mean, you spent money in free agency, top flight money on your guard position. At least that's where you spent the most of it outside of bringing back Khalil Mack.
Right.
You went really limited resources on what you spent on your pass catching options with Tyler Conklin and Mike Williams and bringing back Jalen Reagor. So if that's the case and you don't want to spend premium resources on it in free agency, are you going to spend that in the draft? Right. And the thing is like, it's not that the first 2 picks are all that you have, but they're your best chances. And, last year, the guys who made the biggest difference were taken in the top 2 rounds with Ladd McConkey and Joe Wall. But let's get to this last one here from 619 Shaggy, and I think you might buy this one. Buy or sell, the Chargers will draft 2 interior defensive linemen from their 10 picks. Buy or sell?
I am going to buy this one. I do feel like that they are going to try to take somebody early on in the draft with, one of the first 3, picks that they have, because they have to get a blue chipper. They got to get somebody who's a difference maker on that defensive line, because I feel like, you look around that Chargers defense at pretty much every level, there are guys that are difference makers at almost every single position except for that defensive line. So I think that's definitely something where they try to get more of that sure thing in the beginning, and then take one of their later round picks where they find somebody that they're sold on the traits and see that this is somebody like a more of a ball of clay that they can mold into the type of defensive lineman that they want. And obviously with what Mike Elston did last year with the guys that were in the building, I think you have a lot of trust in his ability to be able to develop players and see them go out there and make an impact on your football team.
Yeah, I think that finding the game-changing kind of difference maker on the interior makes the most sense, obviously, and it wouldn't surprise me at all to see them spend a premium pick to go get it.
Yeah.
And I think it's also important for them to kind of churn the bottom of that roster, at least the bottom of that position group in that room, where you have, maybe Justin Aboybe makes a leap, right? But like, even with the additions of Naquan Jones and Deshaun Handon bringing back to your Tart, you still need more competition at the bottom, because you have guys like Tito Abonia, and Scott Matlock and Justin Aboig being a lot of unproven commodities.
Yeah.
Those guys should have competition. And I wouldn't be surprised if one of those 6th round picks ends up going towards that and them trying to get somebody with maybe a different build than a Justin Aboig as far as a long-term, maybe more of a project type of player. But we still have more to get into, and I'm going to tell you why there is definitely a chance they trade up for Tyler Warren. I'm not sure they will, but I do feel pretty sure they're going to make some sort of draft day trade, and we're going to get into all that and more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, I need to tell you guys about FanDuel because the NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins, and that is so important because it's not just almost the NBA playoffs, it's almost the NHL playoffs, and it's also the Masters this week. So much great stuff to be able to bet on, and you could be able to have $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes it super easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props, and especially with the NBA, from three-pointers to assists to steals, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props, including the 15-plus point player props, where you can just go through the league and pick all the players you think could score 15-plus points. And right now, you want to make sure you don't miss out on it. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. David, we have more buy or sells to get into because there's a lot of overreactions and storylines to talk about. And I want to talk about this one here that we have from Aether, who's asking a question that I think most people want to know, which is, could the Chargers potentially try to move up to get one of the top 2 options in the draft at tight end, because we know how big of a need it is?
Daniel, David, this is Aether. I love you. Buy or sell Wednesday an overreaction. According to Damian Parsons, if Tyler Warren slip down a little bit, the Chargers will move up into the top 15 to snatch him. I'm buying. They will be aggressive. What do you say? Thank you. Love you.
It was very interesting to hear Damian Parson say that there's a chance he slips down, right? In the mock draft they were doing, it was a what would we do mock draft, right? So it's not something he was saying he thought would happen. And even when I said, what the chances were, he kind of made a face where I don't think he actually thinks that's going to happen. But what I do think is there are some GMs that are split on who the top tight end in this draft class is between Tyler Warren and obviously Colston Loveland, the guy that we hope and maybe is the more realistic guy to make it to 22 for the Chargers. But what I would say is I'm going to sell moving up into the top 15. Like, I just think that's too far. I don't think Joe Hortiz is going to give up a premium pick to go and move up, because the Chargers need impact players. They need to find 3 or 4 starters in this draft class, right? I don't know if you can ship off one of your best chances to get one of those guys for just another chance, another dart throw, even if you feel like it's a more, a better chance at it, right? With Tyler Warren, a more premium type of prospect. I mean, in this regime, they're 1 for 1. Ladd McConkey is the only guy they've traded up for after the last regime was 0 for 4 with guys like Manti Te'o, Kenneth Murray, and Jeremiah Tauchu, and Melvin Gordon, which might be an arguable one. In my mind, it's not. And the Ravens have made a draft day trade in 4 of the 5 past drafts that Joe Hortiz was with that organization. And the other season, they didn't make a draft day trade. They traded their tackle Orlando Brown for a first-round pick. So, I mean, I would say, David, there is a chance that Joe Hortiz wants to make a trade in this draft. Will it be from Tyler Warren? And how far would they go to do it? That part is unclear.
I'm with you. I'm going to sell it as well. I think that Joe Hortiz, they covered their draft picks. I mean, that's kind of been apparent with how they've kind of set up their offseason, how they've filled their apparent holes that they've
no
had to
trade
address.
for Mark Andrews,
right.
no trade for Dallas Goedert.
Exactly. And they have 10 picks, right? They could easily have made something happen to where it wouldn't have really hurt their ability to restock, but they really truly believe in building through the draft and utilizing those picks that way. And I just think from 15, that's still, going to require a pick that you're going to not want to separate from, because the fact of the matter is this: they're not a tight end away from being a Super Bowl contender. They have to address multiple needs, and they not only have to just address them with a body and check the box. No, they have to hit on these picks, and they have to make an impact immediately. So I just don't know if you mortgage your ability to do that by securing the services of one of these tight ends that are probably not on the level of a Brock Bowers, which I think that's the type of player or impact that you're going to have to try to want to get if you're going to make a move at that magnitude.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. If you're getting a Brock Bowers level of prospect, if I thought that either of those guys were, yeah, maybe you try to get into the top 15 to go get him, right? I don't think these guys are on that level. We talked about it with Damian Parson. How much is the Brock Bowers effect going to kind of shift the way, or how much teams are going to try to get that guy this year? What I would say, though, is like, hey, if the Chargers want to trade up reasonably for either of these tight ends, I'm probably going to get behind it because, like, both of these guys I think are worth it within reason. If you're talking about, a potential non-day 2 pick to have to go get them, and I think that's kind of where it lies for me. But let's get to this buy or sell from Ja Rowe, who says, buy or sell, we will make a draft day trade. So this is different, David. Obviously, one of them is going up for Tyler Warren. This one is just buy or sell. Once the draft day comes, once those few days begin, the Chargers will end up making a trade during that span.
This I am going to buy. Joe Hortiz comes from the plant of the Baltimore Ravens, and they are born and bred to trade. They have done it multiple times over and over and over again. I think there is absolutely no way that the Chargers leave this draft without making some kind of trade, and I tend to lean towards the trade back scenario. I think that's something that I think that they're probably going to be more inclined to do, pick up even more picks, even more swings at the dartboard if they don't have the draft that shakes out the way that they expect it to.
Yeah, and if you look at the trades they made with the Ravens, whether, it was trading back with the Bills and taking Tyler Linderbaum or, all the other trade backs that they've made, they've been more likely to trade back than they've been to trade up. They've done both, and they did both a lot because there were so many draft day trades, but it was more likely that they were going to trade back. I would say that up or down, whatever the case may be, especially since they've already in one draft shown you that they're going to make a trade when they traded up to go get Loud McConkey. He's 1 for 1. He's done it 100% of the time that he's been with the Chargers, obviously, but I think that they will make a trade more than likely. You just have to kind of play the percentages at this point. Like, if you look at the percentages, they're much more likely to make a draft day trade than they are to sit back. Whether that's up or down, that's up for debate. And let's get to this from Action Dan, because he's kind of going to that same subject when he says, with the draft talent dropping off before the Chargers pick at 55, buy or sell, the Chargers trade down in the second round to secure more draft picks. Dave, what do you think?
I like this idea. I think this is probably closer to where I would feel comfortable. I don't really know if I want to trade down in the first round. I mean, it depends on what they're trying to offer, right? Obviously, one of the things that I live by at work is if it makes enough dollars, then it makes enough sense. And in this situation, it's got to make enough sense for them to make that deal for sure. But I think in the second round, I think there's still a great possibility to be able to add a premium player, a guy that can make an impact on your football team and still be able to acquire an extra pick, whether that's, a fourth or fifth, right? I think you got to understand that the further you go on in the draft, the lesser the compensation that you should expect to receive when you make those type of trades, depending on how far they're trying to come up to your spot to be able to get the pick that you have.
Which is totally a valid point. And I think that's the part for me why I would sell it, honestly, just because to me, if I'm going to trade back when I already have 10 draft picks, I'm going to need something where I feel like I, have a good chance of getting a starting player. And then the earlier in the draft you get that pick, the easier it is, or at least the more likelihood you have to hit on it. But I do think that maybe we're sleeping on this draft class a little bit and saying, that their talent is all going to be dropped out by the Chargers pick at 55, because in all likelihood, the guys that most people consider in the top 50 best prospects, some of those guys are going to slide, right?
Yeah.
The Raiders took
Happens
Cleveland
every
Farrell
year
with the 4th overall pick. So the Chargers might be in a prime position at that pick to kind of get one of those guys. And that maybe even that is where you decide to trade up for, right? If you don't want to trade up, if you don't want to spend the premium capital, maybe do what you did last year and trade up in the second round as you see that talent start to evaporate. If that's the way they feel and they think it's going to drop off before it gets to 55, go get your guy if he's there in the second round, as opposed to having to really spend a premium pick to move up 10 spots in the first round,
Right.
which is going to cost you a whole lot. And I saw this from Daniel Jeremiah, which I thought was very important to this specific conversation. He said, I've talked to several GMs and head coaches over the last week, and everyone seems to agree this draft is a starter draft. Maybe not a ton of star power, but your goal should be to come away with 3 or 4 solid starters. They are out there. Go find them. So I think with the 4 6th round picks you already have, I'm not as interested in day 3 picks for the Chargers this year. Yeah, a 4th round pick, you can find a guy and that could be top 120 players, sure. But I'm not interested in later picks. How many picks are you really going to take? If I was to guess, I would say they're taking maybe less than 10 picks, more than I think it's likely that they're going to take 11 picks in the 2025 draft. But we still have more to get into, especially with all of the things surrounding the interior of this offensive line heading into the draft and all this talk about Zion Johnson in center. Maybe it's just smoke, and maybe you shouldn't always take Jim Harbaugh at face value. Maybe there is a little bit of deception there. We're going to get into that and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. You've probably heard of Chewy. They really do have everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. Whether you're shopping for food, treats, or even pet healthcare, Chewy makes it fast, easy, and affordable. With over 100,000 products from all your favorite brands, Chewy has everything your pet needs, from food and treats to toys, beds, and grooming. And it's not just for dogs and cats. They've got supplies for birds, fish, reptiles, and small pets too. I've told you guys before, I use Chewy every single month, and my dog is allergic to chicken, right? And once you find out your dog's allergic to chicken, you realize that so many dog foods have chicken in it. So I have to get a very special kind, and it's so nice because Chewy auto ships it to me every single month. Another great thing is the times I forget to have it auto shipped, they've got it to me in like 2 days. So that part is great. The customer service there is absolutely top notch, and I think that's a dying thing. Really, honestly, customer service has died a little bit. Not with Chewy. They still have real people giving you real-time customer service, and they have everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. Right now, you can save $20 off your first order and get free shipping by going to chewy.com or clicking the link in the description. Save $20 off your first order with free shipping by clicking the link in the description. Minimum purchase required. New customers only. Terms and conditions apply. See site for complete details. All right, David, let's get into more of these buy or sells. And as we can tell from you guys, there's still a lot of questions about how the interior of this offensive line is going to shake out. But thank you, as always, for making us your first listen, especially the everydayers. Hit us up on Twitter, hit us up on YouTube, and everyone who contributed to this buy or sell show. Thanks for also making us your first listen. If you need a second listen, make sure to check out Locked On NFL Draft so you don't have to try to go to the black market to find NCAA college football tape with all 22 angles.
Like we
can
do.
just listen to someone and hear them. And I still do have to do both, right? I'm doing both of them. I love hearing Keith Sanchez and our guy Damian Parson, who's just on the show on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast from. It's much easier than the alternative. Let's get to this one from Donald Rickert, who says, buy or sell. The talk about moving Zion to center is much ado about nothing and has mostly occurred in Liars Month, aka April. James is a much more of a lock to play center than Zion Johnson. David, buy or sell?
As much as I want this to be the truth, I really, truly do. I'm going to sell it. And I know it's Liars season, but that's what we were trying to figure out last year when Jim Harbaugh told us directly to our faces exactly what they were going to do. And lo and behold, they did exactly what they said they were going to do. They took an offensive lineman because offensive linemen are weapons to Jim Harbaugh. So I just think that, and also, like, this hasn't just been Jim Harbaugh. It's also been Joe Hortiz. So I just think this is something that they very truly do believe in his prospects and ability to move to center, and they believe they're going to give him every opportunity to win that job.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. I would sell that it's all Liars Month, mostly because, maybe it's get people off the scent of them taking Gray Zabel at 22. I mean, that would be kind of the only way I could see how it would benefit them to lie about it, other than to just kind of, make their fans feel better about the situation. And I don't think they're doing that. So
nope.
I'd say that maybe, there's a small chance that's the case, but I do feel and believe them when they say that they're infatuated with the thought of Zion Johnson at center. Now, it feels like they think he can really play center, but I would also kind of buy that maybe it's not as likely that he's just a foregone conclusion at center that he made it seem to be, right? And when he's talking about left guard, he's mentioning all these guys, and he doesn't even mention the guy that he says is the top option for the spot. So maybe they're not so sold about them just being totally good on their offensive line. That's part of the spot, part of that where I'd say maybe that's a little bit of smoke. Maybe they're not as confident in all of the guys they're talking about when they're raving about all the different versatile options that they have there. I would say maybe they're not as happy with that line right now as they're putting out there, which I think would be the smoke. Maybe that would be more realistic there. But let's get to Jackson here, who says, buy or sell, the Chargers should be looking for potential replacements for both Zion Johnson and Trey Pipkins in this draft. David, buy or sell?
Yeah, I'm buying it for sure. 100% that they should be looking to upgrade their swing tackle, which is what I honestly see Trey Pipkins to be. I know that they're parading him around as a guard, but I mean let's be honest. I think he's a swing tackle, but they should be looking to add more depth. I mean, it's not just about adding the top end and getting your starters. Like as we know, you are going to experience injuries throughout the NFL season. It is just going to happen. So the better quality depth that you have available, the more that you can weather the storm and hope that you're able to keep things afloat while your starters are getting back healthy and getting back in the mix. So yes, you should always be looking to add more offensive linemen. And also you look at the contract situation. Trey Pipkins is in the last year of his contract. And of course, Zion Johnson is about to not have his 5th-year option picked up. So yes, this is definitely something where the Chargers should be looking to add their replacements for both of these players.
And I think that's kind of the interesting part about this buy or sell, right? Because are we talking about swing tackle Trey Pipkins and center Zion, or left guard Zion Johnson, or is it swing tackle Trey Pipkins, guard, whatever? Like, it's hard because we don't even know where these guys are going to end up, right? Or who should be trying to fight who for what position. And I think that's kind of what muddies the waters right now. But I think, to me, to your point, Trey Pipkins is a swing tackle, and we've talked before about them potentially trying to add a young tackle to be a cheap option behind your 2 expensive tackles that you have right now to be a legitimate backup to those guys, to your 2 stalwarts that you have. Because going and paying your tackles a lot, it'd be nice to have somebody a little bit cheaper, not a $9 million backup tackle like the one that they have right now potentially. And I'd say on paper, they already have an upgrade for Zion Johnson at center. What they don't have necessarily is an upgrade for Zion Johnson at left guard at this moment. But no matter what happens, to your point, they don't have a long-term answer at center. And I'd be shocked if they felt good enough about Zion Johnson and him not playing the position he has played and giving him a 5th-year option that's going to cost way, way too much for the level of play that you've gotten out of him. Which leads us to this last one here from Laser Beaming, who says, buy or sell, Zion Johnson will be replaced as a starter by a rookie in this year's draft. So, Dave, that's a very specific way that he's going to be replaced. Are you buying or selling that?
Yeah. So with this one, I think you think about all of the different things that the Chargers need to accomplish in this draft, and I just think this is one of those things where they might not be able to find that blue chip 100% dominant replacement for him. So and with all of the talk of him being a center, I think honestly, even now, the most realistic situation in my mind is that he is back as the starting left guard for this Chargers offensive line, with somebody else being the center, whether or not they give him every opportunity to try it or not. I just still feel like that's the most realistic situation.
Yeah, and it just in this buy or sell says starter, right? Doesn't mean starter necessarily at center, doesn't say starter at left guard. And I think that's kind of the anonymity, the kind of ambiguousness of this conversation is because are we talking about Zion at center or are we talking about Zion at left guard? Because I could see him being replaced by a rookie left guard, but that doesn't mean he's not going to be starting at center, right? If it's center Zion, then the replacement, like we talked about, could be Andre James. And hopefully, I think the best plan, honestly, is to have Andre James just thoroughly outplay him and take that spot in camp. And then maybe in that scenario, he moves back to left guard if they didn't replace him. Now, if they take a left guard early in the draft, because it does feel like if they're going to just get an automatic replacement for him, you'd have to spend a premium pick on it. Then I could see a situation where you don't have Zion Johnson starting and you've replaced all 3 of the interior guys that you had from last season. I don't think they're going to get a center, though, that's going to be competing with Zion Johnson and Andre James and Bradley Bozeman
Yeah.
and having that, rookie center potentially take that job, because I don't know how many rookie centers outside of, a Gray Zabel is going to be able to do that. And maybe that picture changes the more we get into this draft class, and maybe there's some guys that could surprise us. And obviously the play on the interior hasn't been great, so maybe it wouldn't take very much, or maybe it's just not as much out of the realm of possibility that a rookie could come in and take that spot. What I would say is it'd be pretty hard to see a rookie coming in and playing better at center than the 2023 version of Andre James.
Yeah.
And if they're getting that, that's the best case scenario in my books. But that is going to wrap things up for today's show. The good news is if you didn't get to contribute, you will have a chance later on this week on Fan Mail Friday to get your question on the show. But on tomorrow's show, we're going to be looking at second round weapons. If the Chargers do go trenches, like we talked about at the beginning of the show, are there guys you could still feel good about getting in round 2? Maybe a Mason Taylor, who we know the Chargers have already visited with. Maybe it's the tight end out of Miami they could go with if they don't get that tight end in round 1. Maybe they go receiver and go with someone like a Trey Harris. We're going to be looking at the guys we like best as far as the weapon options in round 2 on tomorrow's show. Digging back into the tape, and it takes a long time, but it's so good getting a full understanding of these players, and a lot of times we can find plenty of reasons to get excited about them. So make sure you guys are back here tomorrow as we look at the best second round options for the Chargers if they want to take a weapon there. But to make sure you don't miss it, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from, as well as finding the show every day on all of our social media, where you can find us at Locked On LAC on Twitter, at Locked On Chargers on Instagram, and on our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. You can also find the show on each of our personal Twitter accounts every day, from me at Dan Talk Sports and David at Dro Talk SD. But make sure you guys are back here for tomorrow when we dive into the second round of the 2025 NFL Draft and talk about some weapons as we hope and pray the Chargers will consider getting Justin Herbert one. But until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.